Come on in, guys. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about Episode 7 of Survivor Winners at War. Our last pre-merge episode brought our first Edge leaver, and what I'm sure will be a controversial choice for who to vote out. Seriously, there's a lot to dig into this episode, so I want to talk about my top 5 immediate takeaways from Episode 7 of Winners at War. Rather than a full episode recap, I'll be highlighting 5 things from this episode I think we should be talking about. That might be specific characters, moves, or moments, or just general things I noticed. So, spoiler warning. My 5th takeaway from this episode is that Sandra leaving the edge of extinction was a pragmatic, if not disappointing, result. Look, we all know Sandra isn't the best at challenges. In fact, she's probably one of the worst challenge competitors in Survivor history, which, in my opinion, makes her 2 wins all the more impressive. So realistically, there's no way Sandra was going to be the person to return from the edge. So on one hand, why suffer out there for another 2 weeks? But on the other hand, the Edge of Extinctioners can still influence the game via fire tokens, and what person wouldn't want a front row seat to the most epic season in Survivor history? I don't know, apparently not Sandra. So hey Sandra, I get it, you weren't coming back from the edge and you know it, so you peaced out. But I still wish you would have stuck around. My 4th takeaway this episode, and this is a mini, but what on earth was that music? You know what I'm talking about. Right before Tribal Council, some music that sounds like John Carpenter's score to They Live starts playing. I unfortunately can't play any of it because YouTube. But the music was so jarring and played for so long that I genuinely thought someone was watching a movie in the other room. And just earlier this season, I'd remarked that the music this season was on point. I take it all back. My 3rd takeaway this episode is that the Edge continues to be the highlight of this season to my complete and utter shock. Perhaps that's simply by virtue of being the temporary housing of all the legendary players, but I'm seriously digging the Edge. This is where the show goes when it wants to show us the type of super real conversations we used to see all the time in the early days of Survivor. That scene of Ethan and Parvati talking on the beach was just super moving, and it was great to see a real conversation in Survivor that wasn't followed up by a confessional from one of the parties talking about how they're manipulating the other player by listening and empathizing with them. Survivor, more of this! My number 2 takeaway from this episode is that Michelle may just be playing the best game. Hear me out. On Sele, she was firmly in the co-pilot seat, safely hiding behind Jeremy, but very much in the know and making decisions. Now, she got a bad swap draw, and although she couldn't save Parvati, her name doesn't even come up as an option for the 2nd vote. She managed to effectively drive a wedge between Wendell and Yul and split up what appeared to be the tightest alliance in the game. So like, what the heck? If Michelle keeps playing this insanely social under-the-radar game, I could see her as our winner. My top takeaway this episode is, what can we make of every pre-Heroes vs. Villains player going out of the game? With the exception of Natalie, every player on the Edge played their first time before Season 20. So, does this mean the old schoolers are less adept at the game and new survivors are just inherently better at navigating the modern game's twists and turns? Does it mean that they're just too legendary for their own good and their targets were simply inescapable? Or does it mean that they're from an era where Survivor was a bit more rigid, an era where a winning strategy was simply get in an alliance and ride it out until the end, and they weren't able to adapt to a more random game? Well, all of the above? The players on the Edge are a who's who of Survivor legends. Just because they went out early doesn't mean their legacy is lessened, especially since they're all in such good company. As I mentioned last week, this really feels like a passing of the torch from the old schoolers to the new. And ultimately, with literally all of the pre-season 20 players out, I for one am excited for a merge unburdened by a bunch of players on their 4th or 5th try. Let's see what new school can do. Got nothing else for you. Please consider bequeathing your fire tokens to the like and subscribe button, and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.